Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. My name is Victoria. On today's tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to make this very beautiful dress with rope at the back. If today is your very first time here, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment in the comment section below. If this is what you want to watch today, please watch till the end. So on today's project, I'll be using 2.5 yards of Duchess fabric. As you can see, there's a part that is stretchy and there's a part that is non-stretchy. The part that is stretchy, I'll use it for the width, while the part that is non-stretchy, I will use it for the length. Again, I'll be folding this fabric into 4 because there will be no zip allowance. I will not be leaving any allowance for the zip, so I'll be spreading it on the floor to go right into the tutorial. So for this tutorial, I'll be using a freehand sketch for this tutorial. So I'll be marking out my starting point. After I'm done marking out my starting point, it can actually be your starting point or your shoulder line. So after I'm done marking out my starting point, I'm going to go down to the vertical measurement. The vertical measurement is your half length, your hip, your knee line, and the full length of your gown. So for this half length, I'm going to use 16.5 inches. 16.5 inches is what I'm going to use for the half length. Then I'll be using 10 inches for the hip line. Then I'll be using 19 inches, and the remaining will be the full length. The full length of this gown is 64, but I'll be adding 2 extra inches to it to make it 66. So when I'm done with this, you can see how I'm marking it. Please ignore the floor, ignore what I'm wearing, just concentrate on the tutorial. So I'm going to go straight to my shoulder line. My shoulder is 16 divided by 2 is 8. I'll come down by 1 inch shoulder slope. From there, to get my armhole, I'm going to divide my bust by 6 plus 1.5. When I'm done with it, whatever I get, I'm going to mark it down. After marking it down, I'm going to make this line visible so that I can place my shoulder measurement. So this is when I want to draw out the line across the fabric. So when I'm done drawing out the line, I'm going to replace my shoulder measurement on my chest line, because this is now my chest line. I'm going to replace the 8 inches I used there, and then I'll mark it straight from the shoulder slope down to the 8 inches shoulder measurement that I used. After which, I'm going to take my tape from the 1 inch shoulder slope and then put it on my chest line to get the middle of my armhole line. This is because I want to eliminate bulges from my armhole. I will go in by ½ inch and then I will connect it with my ruler. I'll connect it with my ruler, just the way you see me doing like this. I'll connect that line using my French curve down to my chest line. When I'm done with this, I'm now going to go and take my bust measurement. For my bust measurement, I'll be using the bust measurement divided by 4. Then when I get it, I'll mark it and add allowance. My allowance is 1 inch. I'll be using 1 inch for my sewing allowance. Then I'll do the same thing for the waist. My waist measurement, whatever I get, I'll divide my waist measurement by 4. Whatever I get, I'm going to mark it down and add 1 inch. I'll do the same thing for my hip. I'll divide my hip by 4. Whatever I have for my hip, I'm going to mark it and add 1 inch. So in this tutorial, for the seam allowance, I'll be using 1 inch for all the allowances. Then at the knee line, I'll be using same thing. Whatever I get on my hip, I'll replace it on my knee line and still mark my 1 inch sewing allowance, then the full length. While I was doing this, I realized that at the knee line, I didn't add 1 inch allowance. I just used my normal hip measurement. Then I realized that this tutorial, that's the dress we are making, does not have a zip. So if I do not add that 1 inch, it will be very difficult for my client to be able to wear her clothes comfortably. So I later went to add my 1-inch allowance. So I'm repeating the same thing, the hip measurement. I'm repeating it on the full length of the gown. So this is when I was done with the measurement. So I will go ahead and mark my 1-inch. So this was the 1-inch I was saying that I went to mark earlier. This is it. I marked my 1-inch on my knee. Then I came down again, marked my 1-inch seam allowance. Then I did the same thing for the full length of the gown. When I was done with this, I had to rule it out. I used my ruler to rule out my marking so that I will not get confused. Then I ruled it from my chest line to my waist to my hip, knee, and the full length of the gown. So I'll be imputing my neck width measurement. I'll be using 3.75 for my neck width measurement. And then for my neck depth, I was contemplating if I should use 4 inches or 5 inches. So I decided to use 5 inches so that it can pass through her neck freely without stressing her. So I connected the lines together. So while I was done connecting the lines, the next thing I will do is to take my back neck width and my back neck depth. For my back neck depth, I'll be using 1.5 for my back neck depth. I'll connect the shoulder slope just the way you see me connected the shoulder slope. Then this is the time for me to impute my back neck depth. I use 1.5 as I said earlier. I'll connect it down to my neck width. That's my 3.75 neck width. When I'm done with this, the next thing is to cut out. I'll be cutting it out through the armhole line so that I won't confuse you. Just watch the way I'm cutting it out so that you will not have to make mistake while cutting yours. So this is me cutting it out. So while I was done, so I was cutting the full length, and then I decided to trim out the remaining excesses along the full length of the gown. So I went back to the shoulder width to cut out the back shoulder line and the front shoulder line. For me to cut out the back, for me to cut out the front, what I did was I had to cut out the back first. So I'm cutting out the back neck width. Remember that this dress does not have a zip allowance, so it is advisable to cut out your back neck width first before you cut out the front so that you won't have to ruin your dress. So I separated the back from the front so that it's going to give me space to be able to cut my front neckline. So this is when I was cutting the front neckline. So remember that this dress has a rope at the back. So after I was done cutting out this, I cut out the armhole line to avoid those bulges so that everything is going to lap on your body. This is when I was done cutting it. Then I proceeded to cutting the sleeve. So I have folded the sleeve into 4, just the way you see me doing. Then I'll rule out my starting point. Whenever you're starting any cutting or cutting project, you have to start with your starting line. You have to rule out your starting line. So from my starting line, I came down by 4 inches. I marked it. This will serve as my bisect my sleeve bisect. So I'll be using the length of this sleeve is 24, but I'll be using 26 for the length of the sleeve because of the hemming line. I added 2 inches allowance to the full length of the sleeve to make it 26. So at the 4 inches I came down by, the round sleeve is 12 divided by 2 is going to give me 6. So I marked it and I added 2.5 inch as my allowance for this sleeve. This sleeve is not a pencil sleeve, it's actually a trumpet sleeve. They either call it trumpet or they call it trumpet or a free sleeve thereabout, but me, I'm going to call it a trumpet sleeve. So now from that 2.5 inch I added, I'm going to connect that line down to the full length of my sleeve. I will go and recheck if the sleeve cap is going to match with my armhole. So when I checked it, it was perfect. So I had to reshape my sleeve so that it can give me that trumpet sleeve effect. So this was me when I was trying to reshape it so that it will give me the trumpet sleeve, but I wasn't satisfied, so I had to go in more to give it that defined sleeve I wanted. So this was it. Then after this, I will proceed to cutting it out. So while I was done cutting out the sleeve, I'm about to cut the facing of this cloth. I wanted to actually use bias, but I thought of it. Bias will not give it that effect, that rich effect, that neatness. So I decided to use facing. You can actually use bias for your own, but I decided to use facing for my own because I really wanted it to look neat. So I'm done with placing the fabric on the facing, so I'm cutting it out. For the length of the facing, I'm going to use 3 inches. Why am I using 3 inches? I'm using 3 inches because after I'm done joining the facing, I'm still going to overlock it. I'm still going to weave the facing. If I use 2 inches, the overlocking machine might eat up more fabric, so I decided to use 3 inches. I'll do the same thing for the back. I'll also cut the back facing. So this is where I was cutting the back facing. When I was done with the back facing, remember that this fabric, this style, has a rope at the back, so I'm going to cut out the rope for the back. I'll be using 2 inches width for the rope, and then the length as much as you want. That means I folded my fabric 1 inch on fold. When you open it, it's going to be 2 inches. I use 1 inch on fold for it. Then when I was done cutting, I went on to turn it. So now I'm going to show you how you're going to turn the facing. So this is how you're going to turn the facing. The facing will be on the right side of the fabric. Then you go and sew it. I'll do the same thing for the back. So when I was done sewing it, this is it when I was done sewing it. You can see how fine it looks. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to notch it. This is also the front. This is the front of our dress. So I'm going to introduce the rope. This was when I was done sewing the rope, so I'm going to turn it and iron it. When I was done with the notching and on the facing, I went on to iron it. See how beautiful and neat it looks. So you can actually go and overlock this part so that the rough edge is not going to show, to make your work look neat. Or you can actually hem it, but I think overlocking is preferable. So after which you do the same thing for the front. So this is the front. I actually added hemming gum down. I added hemming gum so that it can lay flat on the dress. So this was when I was done with the rope. I'm going to go to my sewing machine to join the dress. When I was done, this was how it looked. Then I'll go right to taking my body measurement. So from the beginning of the dress, I'm going to take my bust measurement divided by 2. My bust measurement is actually 35 divided by 2, that's 17 and a half, sorry. So I will go and check what I have remaining. The remaining one is 2 inches, so I'm going to divide that 2 inches by 2. That means I'm sharing 1 inch on the right side and 1 inch on the left side. I'll do the same thing for the waist. The waist measurement is 31 divided by 2 is 15. So I'm going to place my tape there and mark my 15 and a half inches. It's actually 15 and a half. I'm going to place my tape and mark 15 and a half inches. So when I mark it, I'll check the remaining measurement I have about 1.5 inches remaining. I'll divide it into 2, which will be 0.75. I'm going to mark 0.75 on the right side and 0.75 on the wrong side. So I will use my free hand and connect the lines together. So this is me connecting the lines together. When I'm done connecting the lines together, I will introduce my rope. So I'll introduce my rope. I'll be using 3 inches for my rope. I cut out this rope 3 inches. So I'll go to my shoulder line and mark 14 inches. Initially, I wanted to use 14 inches, but I thought of using 13 inches. 13 inches is actually going to be perfect for this. So I used 13 inches afterwards. I used my direct underbust measurement for it. So when I was done, this is how it looks. I've sewed it down to the dress. So I've sewed it both on the right and the left side of the dress. When I'm done with this, I will go ahead and do my shaping. But before I do the shaping, I would like to introduce my sleeve. I like sewing my sleeve down first before shaping my dress, because it gives me room to actually fix the sleeve properly instead of shaping it and then coming back again to fix the sleeve. So this is when I was introducing the sleeve. I'm going to sew the sleeve on both sides. This is the sleeve. I'll sew it on both sides from the part that I notched. The part I notched, you can see the part I notched will be at the center of my dress. Then the other part, I'll do the same thing there. After I'm done, this is how the dress looks. You can see. And while I was shaping, I went ahead to open the side. I opened the side of the dress by 8 inches because I actually wanted my client to walk freely on this dress because there is no zip. So I opened the side by 8 inches. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next tutorial.